But I'm Lora. Also, some people call me Scratch. That's kind of how the name of the company was concocted to begin with. We are an integrated B2B tech marketing agency headquartered in Boston, but we have people all over the world. Marta is based in Dubai, so we're super excited to have her there, and it's amazing. We've been in existence for about 17 years, and the brands that we service are, tech brands like Comcast Business. VMware was a long-term customer, just to give you a sense of kind of the technology companies that we market. Marta, it's over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marta. I have more than 20 years experience in luxury hospitality. And then I switched to the darker side of B2B tech, and I joined Lora, where I've been helping across the board, but mainly with the launch of the agency's AI brand visibility service. So we have personally, Lora and I, tested at least 20 AI visibility platforms for the past 2 years, being subscribed for most of them for majority of the time. So we think we have a pretty good grasp on what's working and what are the ins and outs of each one of those platforms. So yeah, very happy to be here today and discuss the subject so close to my heart. So looking forward to our discussion.
Awesome. Yeah, we hope that we have a full grasp, but you be the judge and you let us know how we do today, and then hopefully we can answer any questions you have. This is just to give you a sense of who we are. Again, 17 years, we're about 40 people. These are the companies that we service. So you get a sense, and this is kind of what we're known for, kind of building enterprise value. So we start with marketing positioning. We have a PR group, demand gen group, what have you. So what we have gathered here today is to figure out, okay, everyone is talking about AI search, and we have a little bit of a reset to do on that front because it's a lot more than search from our side. Then we'll talk about how we set up an AEO, what are the components of that, how we get from visibility through sentiment to actually an action plan, and why we look at the LLMs as a lens toward our entire GTM, not just whether we show up in ChatGPT or Perplexity. There's some really interesting insights, and we'll show you how we get to those. And then we'll talk a little bit about metrics and how we measure them. I also have Rankscale pulled up, so if you wanted to see anything specific, we can show you a specific dashboard there. So before we go through kind of what our methodology is, I'm sure you guys are also tracking all of the latest research that's out there. I think it's still a little bit of the Wild West with AEO and GEO. And again, AEO more for the B2B side of things, GEO more for the B2C side of things. So the key question is, are we showing up, and what's happening with brands? Are they showing up consistently or not? So there's a lot of work to be done across the board. What was interesting to me is to look at sort of how Webflow's methodology looked at technical maturity, authority, which I think is very important, content maturity, and measurement. The measurement stat here kind of made me wonder whether that's the case, because if most people are kind of midway with their maturity, then we should be doing better on the technical side than the authority side than the content side, but we don't want to split hairs. What was interesting, at least for me, of course, is that two things. You always wonder whether the incumbents in any category have the upper hand. And to a certain extent, that was the case, especially when the LLMs launched. Obviously, they were trained on existing data. But what we're seeing within the last year and a half to 2 years is that things are changing, and they'll continue to change. I think we can expect a whole new wave of changes coming from the LLMs who are going to look at the AI slop differently, and we're seeing this already happening. Wired had a very interesting article, so if anyone is interested in seeing this, of how AI slop is going to backfire if you're not doing this thoughtfully. And then the interesting part to me was that tech companies are much better at this than others, and I'm excited about this because as we continue to work with companies in the space, we can do a lot more damage with folks there and kind of push the limits of what's possible, and then set an example for the rest of the field. Another partner of ours, Trend Demon, they're a website personalization platform that continues to evolve, but they also analyze the traffic on their website. We actually did this joint analysis of all of the interactions that happen across all of the websites that they track last year. This is from half of 2026. Essentially, they redid this analysis just to give you a sense of what's going on. So What we're seeing across the board in B2B tech is that paid is up. We have to pay for the eyeballs a lot more because of the LLMs being that lens, people doing this research a lot more on their own. This dark funnel is real, even more real with the LLMs, and we'll talk about measurement, especially around pipeline. LLM traffic is increasing for folks. I can tell you that across our client base, that has certainly been the case, especially since the beginning of 2026. What we're seeing is that traffic to websites is flat at best. In a lot of cases, we're seeing that going down. And then email responses, especially cold email, is not doing that well. But the good news is that people who are coming from the LLMs usually are better informed and you have much higher conversions. That's essentially what this is saying. So it is important to invest in the LLMs, not only from the sense of traffic and who's coming to your website, but also I'll show you in a second of how we think a little bit more comprehensively about that. So good news, bad news is that we have less control over what's happening. It used to be that in the search era, there's certain, truths that are not necessarily the same. And I think the most important one, if you want to take from this slide, is we used to optimize for keywords and we knew how we were ranking and we were sort of tracking the rank on the first page of Google. We had SEO, paid SEM programs. With the LLMs, that is no longer the case. And sometimes I'm sort of cautioning people to not really look at the rank itself, position 1, 2, 3, because that is so dynamic and changes all the time. But the most important part is that LLMs interpret our brands and our information. They become this lens. So they're not just a redirect. So that's probably the biggest thing here. The rest of it, I'm sure you know. The probabilistic nature of this is giving me grief every day. I wish they were more deterministic, but maybe we'll get to that point. But I think we're getting there. I think directionally, we're getting a much better grasp of what's happening out there. Marta, anything to add? And then I think that fortunately or unfortunately, again, bad news, good news, Infuse is another demand gen vendor that we respect a lot. Their management team is incredible. They invested a lot in market insights, and this is from their 2025 survey, enterprise survey, global. Essentially what this is saying is that the market is in transition. People find it a lot easier to switch these days from one provider to another. So there's a lot of opportunity to be had if we're going thoughtfully about all of it, I guess, but AEO in particular. So I guess the why we see AEO as your new GTM lens is, first of all, I wanted to kind of talk through what we see marketers get right and what in certain cases they get wrong. And again, maybe the thing that I want to focus in here is that it's not the same as AI search, right? It's a lot different. AI is a recommender. They're an influencer, they're a lens. So that's kind of probably the most important thing. And we call this the reframe that's needed. So think of AI as an intermediary and think of this as almost like in the traditional sense, when we wanted to influence the channel, whether it's our managed service providers partners, our VAR partners, our ecosystem partners, will have MDMs, we do events together, all of that kind of stuff, but we're influencing them. We're not taking for granted that they're going to show up for it. So in that particular case, think of this as we're not optimizing for LLMs, we're marketing to LLMs. That's kind of the different reframe that I want you guys to take from it. At least that's our take. So how is it different than just LLM visibility? Well, guess what? Once you kind of run and you do your audit right, you get brand benchmarking data. And we'll talk about the current brand associations that are available in Rankscale, and you can do a lot with that. We'll talk about kind of how we can activate that data. Obviously, this informs your content strategy because now you see where you have positive, negative sentiment, where you have gaps. In other words, are the LLMs getting your story right? Are they getting the full story? And then what are the buyers actually looking for? What are our customers prompting the LLMs for? And how do we show up across these areas? PR can be informed by it. It doesn't have to be that PR needs to definitely slant toward all that LLMs are showing, but for the most part, these audits uncover the important publications that are important for the LLMs and for the buyers. And then when we look at community and ecosystem, you can find new partners, or you can double down on partners that you already have. So rather than thinking about this as a backlinking or a content exercise, think of this as more, how do we go to market together? How can we cross market? What events can we show up for? So that's the idea of, before you invest in your ecosystem partnerships or deciding whether it's Reddit or some long tail communities, do this audit and inform all of your groups. So that's why we're proponents of the CMO owning the overall strategy and the insights that come from tools like Rankscale. So on that note, these are some of the things that, again, I mentioned around brand benchmarking, looking at positive, negative kind of associations compared to competitors. If you've done this before, we used to run these longitudinal brand studies with specific panels, and they cost a lot of money. And I don't know to what extent they were necessarily fully representative of what we're seeing there, unless we spent a ton of money. Today, we can do this with tools like Rankscale. Content strategy we talked about, that I think I talked about pretty much all of those. So maybe Marta can just chime in on the B2C side, what she's seeing that front.
Yeah, well, everything Lora just said applies to B2C as well, especially with consumers. There's also another layer, because the same data can give you a window into the decision journey of your customer, of your buyer, who makes the consideration set, what AI thinks each brand stands for, why one gets recommended over another, who influences that recommendation, and ultimately what the consumer gets sent. That last point is particularly interesting because visibility doesn't necessarily mean you own the customer journey. And I learned that very interestingly through Rankscale this week. I have a client who is a luxury hospitality brand that also acts as a discovery and booking platform for its member properties. And what we discovered is that AI is clearly treating the brand's own website as a very authoritative source for understanding and validating those properties. But when it comes to the booking journey, the citation or the recommended route still points to a major online travel agency rather than the brand's own site. And we found that through the difference between the sources and the citations list that we got from Rankscale. And that's really an important commercial distinction. Being trusted by AI is not the same as owning the customer journey. You can win that recommendation and still lose that booking.
Super interesting. A lot to be done. All right, so when we run an audit, we think about what can we own and what's outside of the citation sources, and Marta said, and it all starts with the right prompting, but that's kind of the first question is how much is within our control and what we can do. And honestly, guys, what I can say that this really depends on the topic and the industry that you're in. So there is that's why we have question marks. Maybe owned is reversed for your market. So it really depends on which market you're in. But usually what we do is we start with this LLM audit that first answers the question of how visible are we? Are we showing up to begin with? And then how are we showing up? Prompt development is super important. What we see is clients go ahead and apply their own thinking to prompt development, and usually there is a wishful thinking component of that. I don't want to be disrespectful in any way, but when you do that, you kind of get into a situation where it's garbage in, garbage out. You don't necessarily have the objective view. So that's why we always recommend that, at least on the B2B side, product marketing should own the prompts, because you need to know your customer. If you don't know your customer, then something's wrong there. And that could, we could do this through even interviewing customers, but essentially the same product marketing methodology applies here. And there's some other considerations in here. So if you need some advice around that, we've developed a whole methodology thanks to Rankscale and to all of the work that we've done in the space of how we approach prompts. But again, it starts with the business problem. What are we trying to do here? Then we also look at the persona journey and how competitors are viewed and what categories matter for our buyers. Again, if we're coming up with our own category, it probably doesn't have enough prompts associated with it. That's similar to SEO, that the market is acting on what they know as opposed to what you wish them they knew. Then you do the benchmarking, and from there you come with a plan of attack. So how do we activate sentiment? First, we sort of benchmark and see what objective brand associations are there with us, and how do we compare to our competition. You can do this obviously within the tool itself, but that's kind of one example. So why is this important is because what Rankscale does, which this is one of the killer features of the Rankscale platform, is the depth of their sentiment analysis. First of all, it's objective, right? What they are doing is they are going and bringing in how LLMs view us, and LLMs do this by looking at multiple different sources. So you can't hide from an LLM, and what happens is you can see your strengths. You can see this by each of the LLMs, each specific LLM. It could be Claude, it could be Perplexity, Gemini, what have you. You can see the neutral associations with your brand. Those provide ample ground for your entire teams, from PR to product marketing to demand gen, to turn the neutral associations into positives. And then the negatives inform multiple different aspects of your business when you look at your brand. Sometimes that means that you need to focus on product development. Sometimes it means you need to fix your customer service. There's no shortcut to that, right? If something is not working, it's going to show up. But guess what? That same data is available for your competitors. So if you wanted to, remember how we used to do battle cards for the sales team? Well, that's an interesting battle card, right? Because now we can go and show our sales folks where our competitors are weak and why, potential buyers should include us and not the competitor. You can run switcheroo campaigns based on that data, right? You can also, for example, if there's specific topics that there's a lot of FOMO around, let's say that a more complex setup is something that people associate with a particular category. This is where you can talk about your SDKs and how easy it is to use, your single API that ties you to all of the various components. In other words, you can use this to inform where there's FOMO in the market, where the information is not correct, where your competitors are weak, and you can essentially formulate your strategy from here for product, for support, for customer service. Absolutely, for content as well. So that's why we love sentiment, and we spend a lot of time analyzing the sentiment, aggregating and playing with it, so that we can inform kind of what we do next. And what we do is, after that, we create action plans. So if LLMs don't see certain aspects of what we do, then it's our job to make sure that we market to it. We market to them, I should say. And what you can do is you can download the raw file from Rankscale. That's another thing that I love, is that these guys provide full transparency into how they pull results. And now with the MCP function that's available, we can essentially connect your Claude cowork and do some of this analysis and some of this digging without having to do some of those steps. But the idea is work with the data, understand it, query it, and figure out based on your strengths. Sometimes we do in Claude, we build projects, we build a client brain, and then based on that brain, we do this analysis, and saves us a lot of time because we unearth the connections where the connections matter. Okay, so how do we do that? Again, once you get the data back, you can look at the content topics and the kinds of things that you need to fix. This is just one example, well, but that's kind of the level of prioritization you can do. You can look at the citation analysis and then understand how this needs to then change your content plans, similar sort of functioning here. And then when you're analyzing the sources, what you are trying to figure out is how do you bucket them into different categories so that you can make them actionable. So in other words, if you look at, sorry, I just got the whole screen on my moving around the window. So, what you can do is you can see what you already have that AI uses. You can look at your own citations, and you can look and group them by various components or various categories, I should say. What we figured out is there are probably 5 or 6 categories. This is our way of looking at the market, but if you have a better way of looking at the market, by all means, we're not saying that this is, set in stone. It's helpful to think about how much of a influence do media sources have. So you can sort of think about, if I wanted to press the pedal on, influencing the LLMs around certain associations, you spend a little bit maybe on PR, or maybe you spend more time in user communities like Reddit. Or maybe you get your teams to be more active on LinkedIn. Sometimes this is like the tech crunches of the world, the crunch bases of the world, I should say. These are business intelligence platforms that people pull from, and then the ecosystem partnerships we talked about. And then if you think about the media inclusions, again, what we try to do is try to bucket it into top tier, tech tier, channel publications. Sometimes channel publications are more important. Again, all of this is being driven by the business strategy, then the go-to-market strategy. We look at this in an informed way, and we don't over-index or any of that. So we just use it as an input to then have a comprehensive plan. The review sites, again, there's like the G2, the Capteras, and then there's niche communities sometimes that matter. And again, our advice on this is, if, for example, ml.orgs is an important community because a lot of your prospects and a lot of your customers are there, then it makes sense to invest in it. If your customers are not there and maybe there's some tangential discussions, then it doesn't make sense for you to invest. In other words, don't invest in communities because they're an important source for LLM influence. Invest in them because you know that this is part of your go-to-market. And it's part of where you are investing and doubling down on. Because if you spread yourself too thin, you know what happens. You're not effective. You're not making the kind of the wave that you're hoping to make. So this is just to give you a sense of how we usually prioritize and why each audit for each client is different, because each business is different. Each company has unique strengths and unique weaknesses, state of brand associations, what have you. And again, similar kind of thinking about these business and market sites. And then we pull the data, we analyze it, and then this is sometimes what it looks like when we need to analyze it for a particular brand. I've used the same one to kind of consistently show you how some of those things transpire, and you can essentially assign percentages to any one of those. So then the next question, actually, are there any questions from folks so far, or can we keep going? Cool. Okay, we'll cover this and then we'll go back to any of the sections. So the first one is visibility, because if you're not showing up, then it doesn't matter. Sentiment matters, because if you're recommended, but you are dinged for things that you don't want to be dinged for, it's probably not a great idea. And then you want to make sure that you are part of the evaluation set, right? Because if there is a bottom of a funnel question and you're not showing up, and you are not showing up for important buying criteria, then, that's usually a problem. And the way we think about this in measurement is, think of this as more of a reputation problem than an SEO problem. It's a little bit different because, again, you're influencing it more so than anything else. So we think about brand measurement in sort of 2 ways, or AEO measurement, I should say. There's the kind of the brand attributes that we mentioned, the visibility, the sentiment, the performance around key topics, how we track that over time, and how we're holding ourselves accountable for that. And then there's the pipeline metrics. So LLM referred traffic and its quality, what are people doing? How much of this is influencing downstream conversions? And again, usually what happens is, folks that are coming from the LLMs, they are better educated. So kind of tracking that, there's more tools that are coming out with this and helping us to track it, but it's still, attribution is a little bit of a black box on this front. So the honest part here is that nobody cleanly has connected spend to return yet on a pipeline basis, but I think we're going in that direction. So it's important, much like we look at our overall marketing and GTM investment, to think about this as brand measurement versus pipeline measurement and track both and not over-index on one or the other, because both kind of sections are important, if you will. Martins, anything to add?
No, I think it's essentially what we're saying is don't look at this as trying to move the needle, because the needle will always need to be moved. It's more looking at it as a means of informing your strategy moving forward. And you can win it all. Definitely, I would recommend that you decide which topics you want to improve or your visibility in. It is overwhelming. You cannot be everywhere. Lora is completely right. Whether it be B2B or B2C, choose the topics, choose the battles you want to fight. And then again, at the end of the day, you're the person who knows the brand best. It's not the LLM. So you know who your customers are. You know who your partners are. If it makes sense, go ahead and invest your time and money into it. If it doesn't, don't believe in your truth. The LLMs are not here to tell us how to do our job. On the contrary, they're here to help us. You just treat them like another intermediary, as Lora very nicely put it in that presentation.
If you guys want to read a little bit more on visibility, I have a column on CMS Wire, and I have a couple of articles around that. So that's a good one that kind of outlines how to measure things. So by all means, you can either snap a pic of this now or find me on CMS Wire later. So these are kind of like, what do you do? What do you do next? And what's our recommendation is that we do live in a world where the LLMs are going to decide for us more and more. So the more work we do now, the better off we'll be when, I guess, the agentic web takes over. There's always going to be a component to this, but I think the more we get ready for that stage, you can see how the websites are going to change. One of the things that we're doing is thinking through the entire LLM experience, if you will. We call this answer-led journeys. If the LLMs are an intermediary, then think of your website as a counselor. When people come to it, you still need to show up, right? I don't think that traditional website architectures, flows are necessarily going to change. I mean, they are changing because you need to make sure that we're accessible to the agents. But if you think of your website as a counselor, then, and users are used to asking questions and prompting the LLMs for feedback and recommendations, think of it this way: your website needs to start to act that way. And TrendDemon has interesting functionality for answer-led journeys. There are a few other providers that are doing that. And it's interesting because now that kind of measurement back down to pipeline can happen if we create this fully contextual experience for people. Because as people come from the LLMs and they're asking questions, you can save it. You can de-identify the person. You can save them into your marketing automation or CRM system. You can then see where you're missing content. So the website, being the counselor, can play a little bit of a role of helping you figure out where the gaps are as well. So the outside lens is super important from tools like Rankscale, but then also the internal knowledge bases can become interesting once the website becomes a counselor as well. And the only other thing that I wanted to offer you is I had the fortune of being included in an AEO guide, or GEO guide in this case, that was published. The book is available on Amazon, but if you're interested in the chapter that I wrote with the help of amazing people like Marta, by all means, reach out and I am more than happy to send it to you. So that concludes the formal section of our presentation, and we're here to open it up for questions or sharing feedback. If you guys have different methodologies, if you found that there's different ways that you're flexing the Rankscale platform to get value from it, by all means, let's share.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you as well. And I also want to say, many people, as Lora mentioned already, it's not a one person's job. It goes across the whole organization, whether it's content or SEO, especially in B2C. I've noticed in luxury lifestyle, everybody's like, oh, that's too technical for me, that's SEO. Well, it's not. And content in PR has so much to do with it. The way you write your website, the way you write your content, the natural language that you need to use, the actual questions that you need answer that the LLM might ask. There's a lot, or there's the user-generated content where the general manager himself must be involved because there's something, for example, you're known for being too expensive or too slow, or like it's a whole executive decision, or something needs to be done with the product. It's not a one-person job. It's not just the sales and marketing's role, which I'm sure we're all thrown the problem. We're not on ChatGPT, or we're not here, we're not there. It's a very, but every company is trying. That's why we said, concentrate on one particular topic that you want to dominate, kind of thing, or control, and then take it step by step, divide it on communities, on analysts, or what's content, what's marketing, and then and use AI for that. It's very good at that as well. As Lora mentioned, co-work is amazing with that. So I think we're definitely getting there slowly but surely, and there's no way around it. It's here to stay. I'm based in Dubai. The Dubai government announced a memorandum that within 2 years, all private companies in Dubai should be agentic. So whether we like it or not, it's coming on board. About governance, that's another issue. I know in Europe, everybody's very well controlled. Well, that's a bit wild East, Middle East here. So, but that definitely woke us all up. So we need to be ready for all that's coming, and we need to be ready for the LLMs reading our websites and our company's content.
I have a question. I have a SaaS client, and I've been trying to do this like sentiment analysis and understand what exactly they're doing better than their competitors. But I think that it's not exactly the same audience that they're targeting. So how could I like try and research what the best audience for a certain SaaS product would be? Because that's kind of where I'm stuck with that whole geo narrative.
So can you tell us what the client does?
Yes, they do hotel property management software.
Okay, for smaller hotels, larger hotels, luxury hotels.
Like medium to luxury, and kind of the two biggest competitors in the space are much better at small brands and kind of being an all-in-one software. So we're in this like middle range target of the medium-sized chains and brands kind of thing.
Martins, this is you. So why are you having difficulties? Because you know the economic buyer of that software, right? It's probably the property manager. It's somewhere in HQ, also deciding on that and propagating into the properties. So where are you stuck?
I think it's kind of like they have great features for specific use cases, but the average buyer is going to be looking for something that kind of solves all their problems. So I'm trying to find what solves their specific niche and not the other problems.
But when you say management, is it like booking management or inventory management, like a housekeeping software, or also trying to find who's your end consumer?
Yes, so they do. The PMS is the main thing they sell, and our brand doesn't really like advertising their add-ons. And so all those other things are add-ons that are an additional price. So I think that's kind of harder to advertise when they don't want to push that themselves. They kind of are very strict about what we push.
Okay, so who do you know who buys that kind of software at a property chain? Do you know the titles?
Yes, it would be general manager, anyone who's kind of in the C-suite, and no lower than that.
And do you know why they buy this kind of software? When you buy the software, what gets better?
You're looking to kind of like manage everything in terms of the hotel inventory and any kind of things that go on within the stay. And so there's a little bit of housekeeping, a little bit of booking, but mostly that kind of in-hotel experience.
So that is an established category. I mean, I guess we can look at the prompting guide, because I think what you guys can do is, let me just share it with you. This is the short one, but so thinking prompt, not the keywords, but start with the business priority. So we just talked about the segment. It's hotel property management software, right?
Yeah.
That is a well-established category. And to your point, maybe I used to work for American Express, so I'm just wondering, anyway, but what is your objective? So what's the business? How much are they an incumbent, or are they? So if they're part of the incumbent set, because it sounds like they are for kind of mid and enterprise level hotel chains, right? Then what you're trying to do is you want to probably create first brand credibility and preference. It's less about the purchase decision itself, because this kind of software is not bought every day. And once you purchase one, you invest in it, you train your people on it. So there's a big change management component if you decide to change from one thing to another. So again, you need to kind of define when this chain hired you, what do they want from you? If they want more business, that's one thing. If they're going and saying we're losing credibility, we're not seen for kind of the innovation we do, it needs to go back to why they hired you. Don't think about the LLMs, because this is just the lens to it. So what you need to sort of figure out is, let's go to this, but in this case, you start doing like, what is the best hotel property management platform for these kinds of enterprises? Because you're starting with the category itself and need to orient yourself in, how are the LLMs seeing the category, who is in there, because that's one of the topics. Then you need to think through, as a GM, what do you care about? What do you need to know? And what happens and what outcomes do you need from the platform? So you have category prompts, you have use case prompts, because a lot of times people may have questions around, I'm trying to think, like inventory management.
I was just going to say, I think it should be led by what are the answers that you want to appear in. And that may be, because if you're saying you're supplying most of the capabilities of your competitors, but at an add-on cost, then why would somebody switch to you if they have to pay more but get the same? Or especially in a very conservative environment like hotel management, which takes years to change any legacy software, whatever they have, especially with chains, is very difficult from my experience. So I think starting point would be, because you said their customers do not align with yours. So what did you say the problem was in the beginning?
I think the problem is they're kind of going after the same customer base as their biggest competitors, but I think a niche market is better. And kind of like talking about those soft KPIs of getting more views, I think that's the new goal, but originally they wanted, software demos and purchases.
So how do you convince them that they need to focus their GTM, is your question?
Pretty much, yeah, they're all over.
Right, okay, so that's a little bit different. And I don't know if I'm just trying to think, how could you use that? Well, because Martins, we don't know what the purchase criteria is. First of all, we don't know how many people are in market for this kind of software. Second of all, you need to understand the purchase criteria, because if it's luxury hotels, they probably don't care as much about the cost and the add-ons as much as they care about what they get out of it. And I don't know if you need to, so this is where you need to kind of figure out, I would focus on understanding how the LLMs view the category and the core players. So what is the best hotel property management platform for luxury hotels? What are the key buying criteria? Ask the LLMs and see what comes back, because the buying criteria that the LLMs see and plug it into Rankscale, obviously, is going to help you understand how the LLMs have connected data from your competitors, the market, what have you, to create the list of purchase criteria. And then you can then ask prompts around the purchase criteria and set the prompts around, they become the topics for each one. So maybe it's customer support, because in the luxury hotel, they want to make sure that if they call at 2 a.m. in the morning when something is not working, someone's there to pick up and resolve their issue. Maybe that's important. I don't know. So when you get that, then you can then see how you're ranking versus your competitors, and you can use the sentiment data this way to go and convince them that they actually need to push the add-ons because they're important. It doesn't answer the niche question for you, but I'll need to think about how you do that. But that would be my recommendation. Start with the category, and there's usually like, what's the best, what's the top, what's the highly recommended, what's the customer best rated. Like, think about all of these, right, to kind of get a handle on that. Then ask about the purchase criteria within your market. Ask about which things are important. Usually, I don't know if this is the case, there's analyst reports that rank these platforms. In my world, there's a magic quadrant for a hotel property management system or AI cloud infrastructure, right? So they list out the criteria, and that's how you can say, they'll take the Gartner criteria, pull it out, or the equivalent of that. You do a little bit of digging and you play with that, and then you'll see what data comes back. You may need to do a couple of cycles with that to get to the answers you're looking for.
But again, do they also want visibility on LLMs, or do they just, you included AEO as part of their plan? Because if they want visibility...
Sierra, what Sierra and her agency wants to do is convince the client to change the way the focus their GTM. So, and they intuitively, probably more than intuitively, know that they're spreading too thin and that they're not doing the right thing. So she wants to use the platform to go and tell that vision. And that's where you start. Seriously, start with the category, because you unearth things, then try to do the buying criteria, ask the LLMs to then rank you versus the competition and what's important. And based on that data, hopefully you have enough ammunition to go and say, guys, in order to win, here's the segment, here's how we're appearing, here's how we measure brand associations. And then you do the whole thing, right? This is how we invest in PR. This is the content, the videos, the communities, the blah, blah, blah that you need to do. Go from there. Does that help, Sierra?
Yes, it does. I definitely think I did that competitor research and not the kind of decision-making factors that real clients would be looking at. So that's a great way to kind of understand it better. Thank you so much.
Glad that it was of some help. Any other questions, team?
Charlotte would like a link to the prompt guide. Definitely get in touch.
Yep, and we'll send it to you. Okay, well, if you guys don't have any other questions, do you have our email addresses? Is this one? So feel free to reach out or find us on LinkedIn. Happy to send you the chapter if you're interested. The chapter, by the way, has all of these things, but it's very condensed. So try to condense the entire methodology into it. You know, the funny part between us folks is that I'm still waiting for the actual book to read the whole book. So I haven't read other people's.
But our part is the best.
But yes, but I have written myself the chapter.
Brilliant.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for making the time, guys.
If you have any feedback on how to make this better, please, by all means, let us know. And if you're having successes that you want to share, by all means, again, we're here to learn from each other.
And thank you, Hendrik, for helping us.
Yes, thank you too for this amazing session. And thank you to all the participants. The recording will be shared probably around next week. So if anybody needs to rewatch something, then it's on our website and on YouTube. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Lora and Marta or to us, and we will help you.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
See you all.
See you all.
Bye, guys.
Have a good day.
Bye.